There are nights when the mind refuses to sleep. It runs through unfinished tasks, unanswered questions, vague anxieties about the future. The modern world seems never to fall silent, and so within us, silence feels distant too. But tonight, we will not try to solve everything. We will simply take a step back. Silent orbit. From 10 dimensions to the edge of the stars is not a scientific lecture. It is a slow journey from an endless line of the first dimension to layers of space beyond the senses, and farther still, to the very edge of the stars. And somewhere along that path, you may begin to notice that the chaos within your mind is only a small ripple upon a far vaster ocean. Einstein once said, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious." Tonight, we do not run from our weariness. We step gently into the mysterious. Let the breath grow slower. Let your questions dissolve like distant starlight. And together, very softly, begin a silent orbit. Imagine just a single line. No width, no depth, no surface to stand upon, no sky to look up at. Only an endless extension in 2 directions, like a slender thread stretched across an empty void. That is the first dimension. In that world, every movement can only go forward or backward. There is no left, no right, no above or below. If you existed there, you would not know that anything was missing, for awareness is always confined within the space from which it arises. Now, gently add another line. When 2 lines meet, a plane appears. The second dimension opens length and width. Shapes begin to form. A circle, a square, yet still no depth. Everything is like a painting without a frame, a carpet spread wide without thickness. If a 2-dimensional being were to look upward, it could never imagine that a third direction exists. Just as we, when gazing into the night sky, do not know whether other dimensions quietly surround us. Then the third dimension emerges. Depth is added, and the familiar material world begins to take shape. Mountains have height. Oceans have deep floors. Our bodies have volume. We can embrace touch walk. This is the world we believe to be reality. And yet even this reality is not the whole. The 4th dimension, time, slips in quietly, like an invisible river. Not merely the movement of clock hands, not merely numbers on a calendar, but the very structure of change itself. The mathematician Hermann Minkowski once said, "Henceforth, space by itself and time by itself are doomed to fade away into mere shadows." From that foundation, Einstein built general relativity, where space and time merge into a single fabric, space-time. There, mass curves space, and that curvature guides the motion of planets. Time is no longer absolute. It stretches, slows, even bends under velocity and gravity. We do not simply live in space. We drift within a 4-dimensional structure. But the journey does not end there. Modern science, through string theory and M-theory, suggests that more dimensions may exist. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In the 5th dimension, one imagines parallel universes where different possibilities branching from the same origin unfold like limbs of a tree. In the 6th, not only different outcomes, but entirely different physical laws may exist. In higher dimensions, still every variation of existence and non-existence could coexist simultaneously, like layers of waves overlapping within an infinite ocean. The thought is both overwhelming and humbling. If there are dimensions we cannot perceive, how many of the things we call the whole truth are merely tiny cross-sections? Immanuel Kant once wrote, "We see things not as they are, but as we are." Perhaps our awareness resembles that of a 2-dimensional being living on a plane, unaware that a 3-dimensional sphere could pass through its world. If a 10-dimensional entity were to move through our universe, would we recognize it? Or would we see only scattered phenomena and call them mysteries? And yet, strangely, instead of frightening us, the idea of many dimensions can bring comfort. For if reality is larger than we imagine, then our present anxieties are only a thin layer within a far deeper structure. Perhaps in some dimension different decisions were chosen. Perhaps within a broader framework, every sorrow and every joy is but a small oscillation within a vast field of energy. When we realize that we are not the center of the universe, we can release the burden of having to control everything. Carl Sagan once wrote in Cosmos, "For small creatures such as we, the vastness is bearable only through love." Perhaps love not in the romantic sense, but as an openness to the unknown is how we endure such immensity. Thus, the journey through dimensions is not merely a story of theoretical physics. It is a journey of awareness. From a simple line to an unimaginable multi-dimensional structure. From the certainty of ground beneath our feet to humility before a multiverse. And as you lie here in the quiet night listening to dimensions beyond the senses, perhaps your own mind is expanding as well. Not to understand everything, not to decode every mystery, simply to accept that the universe may be larger, deeper, and more complex than you once believed. And in that acceptance, there is peace. For you do not need to comprehend the entire 10-dimensional structure in order to exist. You only need to breathe in and breathe out within the small dimension you call the present. Perhaps somewhere in another dimension, another version of you is listening to these same questions. But right now, within the silent orbit of this night, the only thing that matters is the feeling of being inside a vast universe and still being safe. And as the ideas of 10 dimensions slowly dissolve into the gentle dark, you may let them drift away like distant stars. No need to hold them. No need to understand everything. Only to know that such vastness exists, and so do you. After traveling through dimensions beyond the senses, we return to a single, very specific point of light in the night sky, the moon. No longer a poetic symbol or a silver speck suspended in silence, but a real surface covered in dust, in rock, and in mysteries not yet touched. And then, on a quiet day in the 21st century, a small spacecraft named Chandrayaan-3 departed from Earth. It carried no vague dreams. It carried temperature probes, seismic sensors, spectrometers. And yet beneath those instruments it carried something far older, the longing to step into the unknown. When Chandrayaan-3 landed near the moon's south pole, the world seemed to hold its breath. That terrain was not like the places where Apollo once walked. There are craters there, sunk in permanent shadow. Regions never warmed by sunlight. And within that near absolute cold, humanity began searching for traces of water. But before speaking of water, let us speak of temperature. The mission's sensors revealed something intriguing. The lunar surface can heat to nearly 70 degrees Celsius under sunlight. Yet just a few centimeters below the temperature drops dramatically to very low levels. That contrast suggests that the regolith, the fine lunar dust, acts as a natural insulator. This is not merely dry scientific data. It is a hint of the future. If that soil can shield against radiation and extreme temperatures, perhaps one day humans may dwell beneath it. A lunar base no longer feels like fantasy. Then came the tremors. In many imaginations, the moon is a dead world. Yet the seismic instruments recorded moonquakes' quiet vibrations. They are not like earthquakes on Earth where tectonic plates collide violently. On the moon, these tremors can last for tens of minutes, caused by thermal expansion or by the gravitational pull of Earth. Even a world that seems silent has its own pulse. There is something deeply human in listening for that pulse. Then came the discovery of sulfur. The rover's laser analysis detected sulfur in the lunar soil. Sulfur, an element familiar on Earth, linked to volcanic activity and countless chemical processes. Its presence opens questions about a more complex geological history than we once imagined. Each element discovered is a fragment of ancient memory, and then the largest question is, their water ice at the moon's south pole is one of the keys to the future. Water is not only for drinking. It can be split into hydrogen and oxygen fuel for rockets. If ice lies hidden within those permanently shadowed craters, the moon could become a staging ground for journeys far beyond. From a place once seen as a destination, the moon may become a point of departure. A subtle shift has occurred in the way we look at the sky. We no longer gaze upward, only to admire. We begin to look upward, to prepare. And yet beneath the numbers and instruments, there is another dimension to this story. When humanity places a machine in the darkest region of the moon, it is not only a technological triumph, it is a symbol of stepping into the shadowed parts of ourselves. Carl Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The moon's south pole, with its permanently shadowed craters, resembles the layers of the unconscious mind. We cannot heal by looking only at what is bright. We must have the courage to enter the darkness, carrying with us the tools of understanding and patience. Chandrayaan-3, in a way, is the image of consciousness moving into the unconscious. It was not loud. It did not carry grand proclamations. It simply descended quietly, measured, and listened. Perhaps that is how we too should approach ourselves. No need for dramatic conquest. Only the willingness to set foot upon regions of the mind not yet touched and to listen for the subtle vibrations there. This mission also carries a deeper meaning for humanity. It shows that exploration is no longer the story of a few superpowers. It is the shared story of our species. When a new nation joins the journey into deep space, the map of human dreams expands. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The dark regions, the treacherous terrain, the extreme temperatures, these very obstacles open the path forward. The difficulty of the moon's south pole is precisely what makes reaching it meaningful. And as you lie here listening to stories of temperature probes and quiet tremors on a distant world, you may realize that you too live upon an inner planet filled with unexplored regions. There are areas within you that remain in shadow, memories, fears, unanswered questions. But like the moon, they are not dead zones. They are simply waiting to be heard. Chandrayaan-3 did more than lay groundwork for a lunar base. It laid the foundation for a new vision that humanity can extend its presence beyond Earth, if we learn to understand and respect the harsh environment we enter. And this is true of the soul as well. If we learn to understand the darker regions within us without judgment, without fear, we can build a base of peace inside ourselves. From a 10-dimensional multiverse to a small rover on the moon, the journey is not fragmented. It is a continuous curve of awareness, from the unreachable vastness to each centimeter of cold soil beneath metal wheels. And tonight, as every sound grows quiet, perhaps what matters is not where we will build a base. It is that we are learning to step into the darkness with calmness. The moon is still there. The craters remain in shadow, but they are no longer entirely unfamiliar. And neither are you. In this silence, you may let your final thoughts drift like a rover moving softly across gray dust. And know that no matter how vast the universe becomes, human awareness can still find its way very slowly, very gently within its own quiet orbit. From the frozen craters of the moon's south pole, we lift our gaze even farther, not only beyond Earth, not only beyond the solar system, but beyond the orbit of the very star that has nourished us for billions of years. There was a time when humanity believed that planets existed only around the sun, that our system was unique. And then modern telescopes from Kepler to James Webb quietly changed that story. Today, more than 5,500 exoplanets have been confirmed. 5,500 other worlds, each one circling a distant star, each one with its own sky, perhaps with oceans or frozen deserts. Among them are planets that lie within what we call the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold, where liquid water might exist. And yet a subtler idea begins to emerge. Perhaps we are searching in the wrong place. Perhaps life does not need to reside on a planet at all. Perhaps it hides upon the moons of those planets. Exomoon satellites orbiting exoplanets may be quiet candidates for life. Because they may receive warmth not only from their star, but from the tidal forces of their parent planet. That constant gravitational pull can heat their cores, sustaining oceans beneath thick layers of ice, much like Europa around Jupiter or Enceladus around Saturn. Two sources of heat, two pulses of energy. And sometimes it is this very interplay that creates conditions more stable than those of a solitary planet. Imagine an exomoon, nearly the size of Earth, orbiting a giant planet. Above it, a sky veiled in dense atmospheric clouds. Beneath it, a warm ocean kept alive by tidal heating. Their forms of life may exist beyond anything we have imagined, but for now we cannot see clearly. Our technology remains limited. Detecting an exomoon is difficult. Analyzing its atmosphere is far more so. The light signals we gather are only faint fluctuations, a subtle flicker when a distant body crosses its star. We are listening to the universe through a very thick veil of static, and this carries a profound philosophical meaning. Immanuel Kant once wrote, "Two things fill the mind with ever new and increasing admiration and awe, the starry heavens above me and the moral law within me." The starry heavens above and the moral law within. Perhaps when we search for life out there, we are also searching for a reflection of ourselves. We long to know that our questions are not echoing into an empty void. Perhaps humanity's deepest fear is not death, but loneliness. If life exists only on a small planet, orbiting an ordinary star at the edge of an average galaxy, then we are both uniquely precious and terrifyingly fragile. But if life is common, if hidden oceans quietly endure beneath the ice of millions of exomoons, then the story changes. The universe would no longer be a cold desert. It would become a vast garden where seeds of life take root in silence. Carl Sagan once wrote in Cosmos, "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. If we are formed from stardust, perhaps other places in the universe carry that same potential, the same periodic table, the same fundamental elements, the same laws of physics or variations of them. And though we do not yet have clear evidence, the search itself is a healing journey, for it teaches us humility. It reminds us that our awareness is still limited, that we may be standing on a vast shoreline, picking up only a few pebbles, while the ocean of life stretches endlessly before us. There is something tender in the thought that somewhere around a faint red star, an exomoon turns slowly, and beneath its ice, a warm ocean moves. No one hears it. No one observes it. Yet life, if present, continues. This reminds us that not all value must be seen in order to exist. There are parts of you that are the same. Quiet thoughts, unspoken dreams, unrealized possibilities. They may not yet be detected, but that does not mean they are not real. The search for exoplanets and exomoons is therefore not only a story of telescopes and algorithms. It is a story of hope. Hope that life may bloom in more places than we imagine. Hope that we are not alone in the dark of the cosmos. And even without answers, the search itself changes us. For when we look up at the sky knowing that thousands of other worlds are turning in silence, we no longer feel like the center. We are simply a small part of a vast symphony. And within that smallness, there is peace. As you lie here in the quiet night, you do not need to know how many exomoons exist. You do not need to decode spectra or calculate orbits. Simply allow yourself to feel the idea that the universe may be filled with possibility. And if life can flourish beneath kilometers of ice in permanent darkness, then perhaps within the silent spaces of your own soul there are seeds waiting for the right moment to awaken. We have not yet heard an answer from the stars. But that silence does not necessarily mean emptiness. Sometimes it is only the pause between two movements in a very long symphony. And within that pause, you can let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts settle. Knowing that out there, thousands of worlds are turning, and within you too, a small universe is quietly in motion, very slowly, very deeply, and very much alive. After lifting our gaze toward distant worlds circling other stars, we return a little closer, not to Earth, not to the moon, but to a giant planet drifting quietly in the outer dark Saturn. From afar, it appears like a pale golden jewel encircled by delicate rings of light. But as we draw nearer, its cloud layers, its storms, its many moons begin to tell a far deeper story. At Saturn's North Pole, there exists something that puzzled scientists for decades, a vast hexagonal structure, a near-perfect geometric form rotating amid violent atmospheric currents. This hexagon is wider than Earth itself. It has remained stable for decades of observation despite the tempests and turbulence below. In the midst of chaos, a precise shape endures. There is something profoundly human in that image. In our own lives, everything can sometimes feel as though it is swirling beyond control, work emotions, outer circumstances. And yet deep within there may still exist a hexagon, a quiet inner structure that keeps us from dissolving. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Perhaps the hexagon at Saturn's North Pole is a reflection of that truth, an inner order within the storm. But Saturn is not only geometry and wind. It is also known for its luminous rings, shimmering bands of ice and rock reflecting sunlight. And then science revealed something gentle and a little sorrowful. Those rings are slowly raining down. Particles of ice and dust drift from the rings into the planet's atmosphere. It is estimated that within about 100 million years the rings may vanish entirely. 100 million years sounds immense. Yet in the 4.5 billion year history of our solar system, it is but a brief breath. Even the most beautiful structures do not last forever. Heraclitus once said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice." Saturn's rings are the same. They are not fixed. They are changing every day, every moment, though our eyes cannot perceive it. And this reminds us of impermanence. Perhaps it is precisely this transience that makes beauty more precious. But Saturn's story does not end there. Around it orbit many moons, each one a world of its own. Titan is the largest. It possesses a thick atmosphere, thicker even than Earth's. On its surface are lakes and seas of liquid methane where hydrocarbon rain may fall as rain falls on our planet. There is no liquid water at its surface. Yet there is a cycle of rain and rivers made of methane. A different chemistry, a different weather. Perhaps even a different prelude to life, though not in a way familiar to us. When we look at Titan, we realize that life, if it exists, need not resemble us. It may arise under entirely different conditions. That thought expands the mind, and it widens the heart. Then there is Enceladus, much smaller than Titan, yet holding a deeper secret. Beneath its thick shell of ice lies an ocean of liquid water. Probes have observed plumes erupting from fissures near its south pole, jets of water and organic molecules spraying into space. That hidden ocean may interact with a warm, rocky core, creating chemical reactions similar to hydrothermal vents on Earth's ocean floor, places where the earliest life on our planet may have begun. If life could arise in the deep darkness of Earth's oceans, why not within the hidden sea of Enceladus? Carl Sagan once said, "Somewhere something incredible is waiting to be known." Perhaps that incredible something is concealed beneath the bright white ice of a small moon orbiting Saturn. And as we listen to stories of hidden oceans, methane rains, and rings slowly dissolving, we may begin to sense something that extends beyond science itself. Saturn teaches us three things: that order can exist within chaos, that beauty can be temporary, and that life may hide in the coldest places. As these thoughts pass through your mind, let them soften like particles of ice drifting gently from the rings into the atmosphere. There is nothing you need to hold too tightly. Even colossal structures change with time. Even giant planets drift calmly in their orbits without haste, without anxiety. And you in this quiet night may do the same. Perhaps within you too there are ring structures you once believed would endure forever. Beliefs, relationships, images of who you thought you were. If they change, it does not mean everything collapses. Sometimes change is simply part of the orbit. And perhaps in your deepest inner darkness, where you once believed there was only emptiness, there lies a hidden ocean of potential, of unnamed emotions, of unlived possibilities. Like Enceladus, they are simply waiting to be discovered. Saturn continues to turn. The hexagon continues to spin in the wind. The rings continue to fall very slowly. And somewhere beneath ice, an ocean continues to move. Let your breathing move with that rhythm. Slowly, gently. The universe is not in a hurry. The planets are not anxious. They simply are within their own orbits. And perhaps the only thing you need to do in this moment is allow yourself to be within your own orbit as well, not trying to escape it, not resisting it, just quietly drifting. Like a small moon circling a giant planet in the peace of a star-filled dark. After the frozen moons and the hidden oceans beneath darkness, a question begins to arise quietly. No longer, where is life? But how do we know what is alive? Across this vast universe, matter exists everywhere. Rock ice, gas, stardust. Yet only in rare places does matter seem to arrange itself into complex structures that exchange energy, replicate, evolve. What creates that boundary? Assembly theory emerges as a new approach. Instead of asking what life looks like, it asks how many intentional steps are required to assemble an object. The concept of the assembly index attempts to measure the complexity of a structure by calculating the minimum number of steps needed to build it from basic components. A crystal of salt may form naturally through simple physical laws, but a complex biological molecule like a long protein requires a series of highly specific assembly steps. The more irreducible steps involved, the less likely that structure is to arise by chance. Here, life is no longer defined by breath or movement, but by the trace of its assembly history. There is something deeply profound in this idea. For according to the second law of thermodynamics, the universe tends toward entropy, toward maximum disorder. All structures eventually dissolve. Temperatures equalize. Energy disperses. And yet within that tendency, life appears like a countercurrent. Erwin Schrödinger once wrote in What is Life 1944, "Life feeds on negative entropy. Life endures by absorbing energy, creating local order within a far greater sea of chaos. A grain of dust does not attempt to become anything else, but a cell does. It replicates DNA. It maintains structure. It repairs errors. It evolves over time." Assembly theory looks at this and suggests search for the traces of selective assembly. If a structure requires too many specific steps to exist, perhaps it is not the product of randomness alone. This has profound implications for the search for life beyond Earth. Instead of seeking a bacterium-shaped organism, we might search for molecules with unusually high assembly index values. But beyond scientific application, this theory touches a philosophical depth. If life is the capacity to create structure amid chaos, then each human being is evidence of that capacity. You with your memories, your experiences, your layered thoughts are the result of billions of assembly steps through evolution, through learning, through choice. You are not a simple random event. You are a complex structure carrying the history of your own formation. Nietzsche once wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." Perhaps life is precisely that ability to give birth to a dancing star, to generate creative order from chaos. Assembly theory remains debated. Not all agree with its approach. Science is always moving, always refining itself. Yet whether entirely correct or not, it opens a new perspective that life is not merely a biological phenomenon, but a particular pattern of organized matter within the universe. When we look up at the sky and ask whether life exists out there, the answer may not lie in the shape of a creature, but in the trace of a process, a structure complex enough not to be accidental. And this leads us to a gentler reflection. In daily life, we sometimes feel as though we are dissolving under pressures and worries. But through this lens, each small action you take, each time you choose patience instead of anger, each time you choose to listen instead of react, becomes another assembly step in the structure of who you are. You are increasing the conscious complexity of yourself, not in opposition to the universe, but in harmony with it. For life does not truly fight global entropy. It simply creates temporary islands of order within a vast ocean, and perhaps that is enough. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "All things are woven together and the web is holy." If all things are woven into a sacred web, then life may be those special knots in the fabric, places where matter becomes aware of itself. Assembly theory in this sense is not only mathematics. It is a story of how the universe tells itself through structure. And as you lie here listening to words about assembly indices and entropy, you do not need to grasp every technical detail. Simply feel that your existence is not trivial. You are a rare structure in the flow of matter, a point of order in a sea of chaos, a long chain of assembly steps unfolding over billions of years. And like every living structure, you do not need to be perfect to have meaning. Life is not defined by permanence. It is defined by the capacity to continue organizing, continue learning, continue adapting. Even in the darkness of night, even when your mind feels weary, that structure remains. Gently, steadfastly. The universe may be vast and cold. Entropy may be the ultimate tendency. But in this moment, you still exist as a living structure. And perhaps that alone is miracle enough. Let the concepts of assembly indices dissolve into the slow music of the night. Let thoughts of order and chaos blend into the steady rhythm of your breathing. There is no need to resist the darkness. Simply continue being a small point of light quietly, peacefully within the infinite web of existence. After listening to the subtle pulse of life within complex molecules, we lift our gaze even farther. No longer a single cell, no longer an icy moon, but the structure of the universe itself. From a distance, when we look into the night sky, the stars seem scattered at random like grains of salt spilled across black velvet. Yet when modern telescopes peer deeper, a gentler truth emerges. The universe is not chaotic in the sense of being unorganized. It has structure. Galaxies are not distributed randomly. They are connected through enormous strands of matter called filaments. These filaments stretch across hundreds of millions of light years, linking galaxy clusters into vast superclusters. Between them lie regions nearly empty cosmic voids, where very few galaxies exist. Seen from afar, the universe resembles a colossal neural network, a cosmic web. There is something deeply moving in that image. When we think of life, we often think of connection between cells between human beings. And now the universe itself reveals that it too is a system of interconnection. Dark matter unseen and invisible acts as the hidden framework of this web. It does not emit light, nor reflect it. Yet its gravity shapes where galaxies gather. An invisible skeleton supporting all visible structure. Perhaps in life there are such forms of dark matter as well, forces we do not clearly see yet, which quietly shape our path. Beliefs, memories, past experiences. We do not always perceive them, but they keep the inner structure from collapsing. And within this web exist structures of almost unimaginable scale, such as the Great Wall of Hercules' Corona Borealis, extending more than 10 billion light years, one of the largest structures ever discovered. 10 billion light years. The number escapes intuition. It renders human measures small. Yet instead of frightening us, that smallness may bring a gentle release. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "Constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul." If the universe is a living being, as he suggested, then each galaxy may be but a single cell, and Earth only a tiny particle within that cell. This thought may shrink the ego, but when the ego shrinks, the burden grows lighter. We do not need to carry the entire universe on our shoulders. We are only a small node within the web, and a small node still has meaning. Baruch Spinoza wrote in Ethics, "The more you struggle to live, the less you live. Surrender to the present, and you'll find the infinite within." Perhaps recognizing ourselves as part of a larger web allows us to struggle less. We no longer feel separate. We belong to something vast. When people see simulations of the cosmic web, many are astonished by its resemblance to the network of neurons in the human brain. A strange symmetry between the macrocosm and the microcosm. The universe outside and the universe within may not be so distant from one another. If galaxies connect through filaments, then human beings connect through invisible threads of emotion language and shared memory. No one is truly isolated. Even as you lie alone in a dark room, you remain part of a web of family, of society, of history, of all life upon this planet. And beyond that, of the universe itself. Carl Sagan once said, "We are a way for the cosmos to know itself." If that is so, then each of your thoughts, each of your dreams is a small vibration within that immense web. Not the center, not an exception, simply a part. And perhaps that is what brings peace. For when you feel lost, remember that even galaxies do not exist alone. They are drawn toward one another by gravity. They move along invisible streams of matter. Your existence is much the same. You are drawn into relationships, memories, experiences. You move within the web of your own life. Not everything is random. There are currents you do not see. There are structures supporting you that you may not yet recognize. The cosmic web reminds us that apparent dispersion can conceal a deep underlying order. And if the universe can maintain structure across billions of light years, perhaps you too can maintain steadiness amid the small storms of your life. Imagine galaxies drifting quietly through space, connected by faint luminous filaments. No sound, no haste, only slow motion unfolding across billions of years. In this moment, your heart is beating. Your breath is flowing. You are a small node in a vast web. And that web does not demand that you become anything else. Only to exist. Only to be a part. The universe is not randomly scattered. There is order within the void. There is connection across distances that seem infinite. And in this quiet night, you may let yourself rest within that idea. That you are not alone. That invisible threads connect you to everything from the people you have known to the most distant stars. Let that thought soften like the faint glow of faraway galaxies. Let the immense web dissolve gently into the dark of night. And as you drift toward sleep, you may carry with you a very light feeling. That within this vast and cold universe, you still belong. After contemplating the vast web of galaxies, let us try something different. Not to look farther in space, but to look farther in time. When you gaze at the night sky, you are not only looking across distance, you are looking into the past. Light requires time to reach your eyes. And if that light departed its source billions of years ago, what you are seeing is an ancient memory. The James Webb Space Telescope was designed to do this more deeply than ever before, to look so far that the light of galaxies has been stretched, shifted toward the red redshift 9, 10, even 11. The higher the redshift, the farther away the galaxy, and the more ancient. The galaxies Webb has detected at redshift 9 to 11 existed when the universe was only a few 100 million years old. Try to imagine that. The universe is 13.8 billion years old, and we are seeing it when it was not yet 1 year old, an infant of space and time. There is something tender in that thought. We are not only observing a mature universe complete with its cosmic web, we are witnessing the first structures beginning to form, the first stars igniting the primordial dark. During the era known as the Cosmic Dark Ages, after the Big Bang, the universe was filled with neutral hydrogen gas. No stars, no light, only a cold darkness stretching across hundreds of millions of years. Then the first stars were born. Their light began to ionize the surrounding hydrogen, a process called ionization. James Webb has detected damped Lyman alpha system signs of dense clouds of neutral hydrogen still lingering from that early epoch. These structures are like preserved fragments of a primordial memory. The light passing through them carries chemical traces from the beginning. And when we analyze that spectrum, we are reading a story written more than 13 billion years ago. Augustine once wrote in Confessions, "What then is time if no one asks me? I know. If I wish to explain it to him who asks, I know not." Time is both familiar and mysterious, and here we see time packaged within light. Light is not only energy, it is a message. Each photon that reaches the mirror of James Webb has traveled for billions of years through space, scarcely deflected, not fully absorbed, until at last it touches a device built by human hands. Perhaps that is one of science's quietest miracles. Carl Sagan once said, "We are star stuff contemplating the stars. We, formed from elements forged in stellar cores, are using our awareness to look back at the very first stars." There is something beautifully circular in that loop. When we see those primordial galaxies, we are also seeing the childhood of the universe before its structures were defined, before the cosmic web fully emerged. And perhaps there is a gentle lesson there. For every human being, too, once had a childhood, a stage unformed, incomplete, full of potential, yet fragile. The early universe was not perfect. It was chaotic. It had no mature galaxies. Yet within that youthfulness, the seeds of structure were already planted. The process of ionization, when the first light began transforming its environment, resembles the moment when awareness begins to recognize itself. Nietzsche wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star." The early universe was full of chaos, and from that chaos, the first dancing stars were born. Perhaps your life has been the same. There may have been dark periods, personal dark ages, when everything seemed uncertain, undefined. And then, a small thought, a small action, a faint glimmer of light, and an inner ionization begins. James Webb is not merely a telescope. It is a machine of memory. It reminds us that the past does not vanish. It remains carried by light. Your memories may be similar. They may belong to years long gone, yet they still shape how you see the world today. But unlike the universe, you have the capacity to choose how you interpret those memories. You are not frozen in your own redshift. When James Webb looks into the past, it does not make the universe sad. It simply understands it more deeply. Perhaps we too can look at our past with that same gentleness, without judgment, without haste, only observation. The light from galaxies at redshift 11 has traveled silently for billions of years. No one heard it. No one knew it existed. Yet it continued its journey, and one day it was seen. There may be parts of you like that. Dreams, possibilities, quiet thoughts. They may have existed for a long time without recognition, but that does not mean they lack value. James Webb gives us a direct glimpse into the universe's childhood. And perhaps in this moment, you may allow yourself a gentle glimpse into your own childhood, into earlier versions of yourself, more vulnerable, more unformed. Not to change them, only to understand them. The universe grew from those early days. It developed structure networks, galaxies. So have you. And as you drift toward sleep, let the image of those young galaxies soften in your mind. Faint points of light from 13 billion years ago, still sending their message into the present. The universe was once a child, and it continues to grow, as do you. After the light of ancient galaxies fades gently into the soft darkness of night, we do not look farther. We turn a little closer, not toward the center, but toward the edge. At the edge of the solar system, where sunlight is reduced to a faint cold glimmer, there exists a small world named Pluto. For many years, Pluto was regarded as a lonely ball of ice. Then, in 2006, it was no longer called a planet. A scientific decision, yet for many it felt like a symbolic loss. Pluto seemed pushed to the margins. And then in 2015, the spacecraft New Horizons flew past it. For the first time, we saw Pluto up close. And what appeared was not a dead block of ice, but a complex world. On its surface lies a vast heart-shaped region, Sputnik Planitia, a plain of nitrogen ice stretching thousands of kilometers. Its surface is not ancient and heavily cratered as once imagined. It is relatively young. This suggests that Pluto has, and perhaps still is, renewing its surface. A world at the edge, yet not motionless. There is evidence suggesting that beneath its thick crust of ice, a subsurface ocean may exist, liquid water kept warm by internal heat. In that distant frozen place, there may still be movement deep within. There is something very tender in that image, for there are parts of us that resemble Pluto, parts once underestimated, parts that seem downgraded. Yet, within them, movement continues. Pluto's atmosphere also changes over its 248-year orbit around the Sun. When it draws closer, surface ice can sublimate into gas, forming a thin atmosphere. When it moves farther away, that atmosphere freezes and falls back to the ground, a cycle longer than the lifetime of many human generations. Pluto does not change in days. It changes across centuries. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change." Pluto is a testament to this. Even at the solar system's edge, where light is faint and temperatures are low, change continues. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Perhaps we are the same. There are changes within you so gradual that you scarcely notice them. Thoughts slowly shifting, beliefs gently adjusting, wounds quietly healing. They do not happen in a single night. They unfold along the long orbit of time. Carl Sagan once said, "Somewhere something incredible is waiting to be known." Perhaps that wonder is not only in distant galaxies. Perhaps it is also in small, forgotten worlds. Pluto was once considered insignificant, yet New Horizons showed that looking closer can always transform the story. There may be moments in your life like that. From afar, a certain period may seem cold, empty, meaningless. But when observed more closely, when regarded with patience, you may discover that there are Sputnik Planitia quietly renewing your inner landscape. Pluto resides in the Kuiper Belt, a region filled with icy remnants from the solar system's formation. Ancient leftovers that never merged into the main structure. Yet those remnants preserve memory of the beginning. Just as childhood memories preserve the seeds of who you are now. New Horizons did not stop at Pluto. It continued onward, touching other objects in the Kuiper Belt. The journey did not end at reaching the goal. It continued. And perhaps that is the most important thing. Pluto reminds us that at the margins where there is little light and little attention, complex dynamics still exist. No world is truly dead if we have not looked closely enough. Augustine once wrote in Confessions, "Late have I loved you, beauty so ancient and so new." There are beauties both ancient and new at once waiting to be recognized. Pluto is such a beauty, ancient as the solar system itself, yet new in the way we understand it. And so are you. There may be parts of you once set aside, dreams postponed, facets of your character considered unimportant, but if you look more closely, you may find they are still alive, still moving beneath the ice, still cycling in their own atmosphere. The universe contains not only colossal structures like the cosmic web, it also holds small worlds at the edge, quiet and patient. And as you lie here in the stillness of night, perhaps you can offer yourself that same gentleness. You do not need to be at the center to have meaning. You do not need to be called a planet to possess value. Pluto continues to turn. It follows its 248-year orbit. It carries ice gas, and perhaps even a hidden ocean. And you too are following your own orbit. Perhaps slowly, perhaps unnoticed, but still in motion. Let the image of a small world at the edge of the solar system drift through your mind like a distant, faint light. And as your final thoughts settle, remember that even what seems smallest may contain an entire system of deep dynamics within. Very far, very cold, yet never empty. From the edge of the solar system, from icy worlds drifting in silence, we move into a deeper region still. Not the edge, but the center. At the heart of many galaxies exists an almost invisible presence, a black hole. For years, black holes were imagined as devourers of everything, an ending point, a place of no return. But the more we study them, the more we realize the story is not so simple. Recently, astronomers identified an intermediate mass black hole about 800 times the mass of our Sun. Not small like stellar black holes, and not monstrous like the supermassive giants at galactic centers. It fills a long missing gap in our understanding, like a puzzle piece absent for decades. And then there is Gaia BH1, the closest confirmed black hole to Earth, only about 1,600 light-years away. Not at a galactic core, not hidden in some distant abyss, but relatively near within the Milky Way. That thought can send a quiet shiver through the mind. A black hole emitting no light, reflecting none, existing so close. And yet what is remarkable is this: it does not devour everything around it. It moves gently with a companion star, orbiting one another in a balanced gravitational dance. Not all darkness is a threat. There are rogue black holes wandering through the galaxy, no longer bound to any star system. They drift in silence, carrying their gravity like an invisible signature. And even in their wandering, they obey the laws of space-time. Albert Einstein wrote in 1916, "The distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." Near a black hole's event horizon, that illusion stretches to its limits. Time slows, light bends. Space-time ceases to be a quiet background. It becomes a fabric drawn taut. When two black holes collide, they generate gravitational waves, ripples in the very structure of space-time. In 2015, humanity detected them for the first time. The sound of two darknesses meeting. not heard with ears but with instruments of extraordinary precision. Yet it confirmed what Einstein had predicted nearly a century before. Black holes are not merely dark pits. They are central actors in galactic evolution. The gravitational pull of a supermassive black hole regulates star formation, guides flows of gas, stabilizes galactic structure. The darkest place becomes the keeper of order. There is something deeply moving in that paradox. Carl Jung wrote in Aeon, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Perhaps a black hole is the cosmic image of the unconscious shadow, not something to erase, but something essential to structure. Without a central black hole, many galaxies might lose coherence. Without its gravity, their form could disperse. Perhaps the same is true in our inner lives. There are darker regions, memories, fears, unanswered questions. We may wish to avoid them. Yet sometimes they are the very center shaping who we become. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Darkness does not only obstruct light, it may become the path. When we look at a black hole, we see nothing. Yet what we do not see produces measurable effects: the orbits of stars, bursts of X-rays, ripples of gravitational waves. There are parts of you like that as well, invisible directly, yet present in behavior, in choice, in subtle response. Black holes do not destroy meaninglessly. They transform. Matter, falling inward, may form a blazing accretion disk before crossing the event horizon. Even near darkness, light can flare. And we remember that our own Milky Way holds a supermassive black hole at its center, Sagittarius A star. It has been there for billions of years, quietly stabilizing the galaxy. We live within a galaxy anchored by darkness. There is a strange comfort in that. Darkness does not mean loss. It can be an essential part of structure. Nietzsche wrote, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster." And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. And perhaps if we gaze into the abyss with calmness, we discover it does not only threaten, it reflects. Black holes are not enemies of the universe. They are the slow heartbeat of galaxies. And perhaps within you, there is such a center, a deep place you rarely touch. A silent region. You do not need to enter it now, only to know that it exists, and that its existence does not weaken you. The universe continues to turn. Galaxies continue to drift. Black holes continue to bend space-time, all within a rhythm that stretches across billions of years. In this moment, your own heart is beating. Your breathing is slowing. Perhaps you do not need to fear the dark. Perhaps you only need to allow it to exist as part of the structure. And as you drift toward sleep, imagine gravitational waves spreading softly through space-time, gentle, subtle like ripples in your mind, gradually settling. At the center of the galaxy, there is darkness, but around it, countless stars shine. And so do you. After gazing into black holes that bend space-time, perhaps it is time to ask a deeply human question. Where will we go next? We know we cannot exceed the speed of light. Einstein set a limit no one has yet broken. The nearest stars lie more than 4 light-years away. Planetary systems that might harbor life are tens, even hundreds of light-years distant. If we cannot travel faster than light, perhaps we must learn how to travel more slowly. From that limitation arose the idea of the generation ship. Not a vessel that merely carries people, but one that carries time itself. A journey lasting centuries. Children born aboard would never see Earth. Elders would pass away before arrival. The ship would not simply be transportation, it would be a world. For such a vision to become real, technology must advance far. Antimatter engines, where matter and antimatter meet, releasing energy according to E equals mc squared, could provide immense thrust. Fusion propulsion, mirroring the reactions within the sun's core, promises sustainable power. Artificial gravity created by rotating the vessel could give its inhabitants a sense of weight. And yet the greatest challenges are not technical, they are biological and cultural. A community of hundreds or thousands must preserve genetic diversity across generations. Monte Carlo simulations suggest a minimum population is required to prevent inbreeding and genetic decline. A closed ecosystem must recycle water, air, and waste like a miniature Earth drifting through space. But most of all, how do we sustain the human mind within a finite environment, without open skies, without true oceans? Here, the question is no longer, can we go far? It becomes, can we live together? Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "What injures the hive, injures the bee." On a generation ship, that thought becomes literal. A small conflict could ripple outward. A single ecological error could affect the entire community. The ship would not merely be machinery, it would be a society. Perhaps interstellar travel does not begin with antimatter engines. Perhaps it begins with the capacity to listen to one another. Carl Sagan once said, "The Earth is the cradle of humanity, but mankind cannot stay in the cradle forever." If Earth is the cradle, then a generation ship may be our first step beyond it. Yet leaving the cradle does not mean abandoning its lessons. We must carry memory, culture, language, music. We must bring not only seeds for crops, but seeds of compassion. A child born aboard such a vessel may never see a true blue sky, yet it will hear stories of oceans, forests, and open nights unshielded by metal hulls. And so we ask, is memory strong enough to preserve identity across generations? Augustine wrote in Confessions. Memory is a vast court with innumerable chambers. A generation ship is like a vast memory itself. It must preserve not only data, but story. Those aboard would not travel only through space. They would travel through their own time, a journey whose beginning and end belong to different generations. There is something beautiful and fragile in that idea. For in your own life there are invisible generation ships. Your family, the traditions you inherit, the values passed down through years you did not witness. You did not begin the story at zero, and you will not end it entirely. The generation ship becomes a symbol of continuity. Nietzsche wrote, "Man is something that shall be overcome." Perhaps becoming an interstellar species is not merely overcoming physical distance. It is overcoming older limits within ourselves, conflict, selfishness, short-term vision. On a generation ship, there is no room for environmental destruction, no space for prolonged war. Space is finite, resources are finite. The ship would teach us a lesson Earth has long been trying to teach, that we live within a closed system. Perhaps before building an interstellar vessel, we must learn to care for our present planet as though it were a natural generation ship. For Earth itself travels around the Sun in a long orbit spanning billions of years, and we are aboard it as passengers. The idea of a generation ship is therefore not only science fiction, it is a reminder of intergenerational responsibility. The choices made today may shape those not yet born. And as you lie here listening to thoughts of vast vessels drifting among the stars, you do not need to imagine every technical detail. Simply feel the possibility that humanity might mature enough to step beyond its cradle. Not hurriedly, not recklessly, but with deep preparation, biological, cultural, and inward. A generation ship would not race. It would drift, slowly through the dark, carrying the laughter of children, carrying the memories of elders. And perhaps upon reaching a new star system, the final generations would see another sky and know they are the outcome of a journey that began with very ancient dreams. The universe is vast, the distances immense, yet human consciousness can bridge time. And in this moment, as your breathing slows, let the image of a silent vessel gliding between the stars dissolve gently into sleep. No haste, no fear, only a long journey deeply human within the quiet orbit of hope. And now, as every chapter has passed, as from an invisible line, we have reached the edge of the stars. Perhaps it is time to see the entire journey as a single orbit. This has not only been a story about space, not only about science, it is the story of how the human mind expands itself. The first axis, the expansion of awareness, began with the simplest thing, one dimension, a line stretching without end, then two, then three, and then time the fourth dimension slipping in like an irreversible current. From there, imagination crossed the boundary of the senses, the fifth dimension, the sixth, the multiverse, parallel possibilities. Somewhere another version of reality may exist. Somewhere the laws of physics may differ. Somewhere everything possible and even the impossible may coexist. But what is more profound than these dimensions is the humility they teach. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." When we realize the universe is larger than all our models, we stop trying to control everything. We begin to listen. And as awareness expands, another question arises: where is life within this vast picture? We look down to the moon, to its frozen south pole, where Chandrayaan-3 touched eternal shadow. We look toward Titan with its methane lakes, toward Enceladus with its hidden ocean, toward exomoons circling distant stars. Life may not be as rare as we once believed. Carl Sagan said, "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff. If we are formed from stardust, then searching for life beyond is also a search for ourselves." Life ceases to be a lonely miracle. It becomes a possibility, a rhythm that may repeat across the cosmic web. And then a third axis unfolds the future of humanity. Black holes are not merely pits swallowing light. They are the centers of galaxies. Gravitational waves are not mere mathematical ripples. They are echoes of ancient collisions. And in understanding this, humanity no longer stands outside the story. We begin to imagine fusion propulsion, generation ships, children born among the stars. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." If humanity's why is to endure and to understand, then the how may be a journey lasting centuries across the void. Yet what makes this entire epic healing is not ambition to conquer. It is the realization that every outward expansion is also a step inward. From one dimension to 10, we learn to release the illusion that we understand everything. From the moon to exomoons, we learn to question life with humility. From black holes to interstellar ships, we learn that the future demands maturity. Perhaps that is the most beautiful part. Not that we will reach the edge of the stars, but that along the way we learn to become gentler with not knowing. Augustine wrote in Confessions, late, "Have I loved you, beauty ever ancient, ever new, the universe beauty ever ancient, yet with each discovery ever new." And as you lie here listening to stories of dimensions of Titan, of black holes, of generation ships, what matters is not remembering every detail. It is feeling something simple, that you are part of this story. Earth is a small node in the cosmic web, yet your consciousness can hold the idea of 10 dimensions. You may be physically small, yet vast in imagination. And as the voice slows, as galaxies shrink into faint distant lights, as black holes are no longer frightening but simply structural, let these three axes merge. Expansion of awareness, exploration of life, orientation toward the future. Not as a race, but as an orbit. A silent orbit where each revolution carries us farther and deeper. The universe continues to expand. Stars continue to burn. Generation ships may one day depart Earth's orbit. But tonight, you do not need to go anywhere. Just lie still. Breathe. And know that within this vast epic between 10 dimensions and the edge of the stars, there is a very small point, very quiet where you are. And that is enough. And now, as the journey from a simple dimension to the edge of the stars comes to rest, you do not need to carry all the concepts we have passed through. You do not need to remember 10 dimensions. You do not need to picture black holes. You do not need to think about generation ships drifting among the stars. The universe continues to expand whether you are awake or asleep. Galaxies remain interwoven within their vast cosmic web, and Earth still turns quietly in its familiar orbit. Tonight, you do not need to understand everything. You only need to be here. Perhaps the most beautiful gift science offers is not answers, but a sense of humility and peace before something greater than ourselves. Let every question dissolve like red-shifted light from distant galaxies. Let your breathing slow like a silent vessel gliding through space. You are not small. You are part of this story. And within the quiet orbit of night, allow yourself to rest.